Razia Hamidi is a representative with the National Council of Canadian Muslims and joins us now. Razia, what's your view of this proposed bill?
Unfortunately, this isn't something that we're facing for the first time. It's identity politics that we see continuously replay itself here in Quebec. When these hearings began last year in Quebec, many Quebec organizations failed to see the relevance of them, and we continuously see that discussion happening now as well. Just last week, we saw a study, actually a poll come out that amongst Quebec, it was by the Angus Reid poll, and it showed that Quebecers held reasonable accommodations as one of the lowest priorities. So we really have to ask why this continuously comes up in Quebec and these identity politics that we're continuously seeing that marginalizes already a marginalized group and vilifies the Muslim community here in Canada. It's the same old song with a different tune, and we really have to call it out for what it is. It is a racist law and legislation that's being put forth.
This is something that's going to come up to a vote tomorrow. What do you make of the debate that's happened in the National Assembly and the tone of the debate?
Unfortunately, the tone hasn't changed much from when we saw the Pauline Marois government put it forth. We're seeing similar rhetoric being used and feeding into that Islamophobic narrative. We've seen a spike in Islamophobia in the last 2 years, and rhetoric such as this only feeds into that. We have, the 1-year anniversary coming up of the 6 men that were shot in Quebec City, and this kind of, legislation and the rhetoric around it only feeds into that hate speech that gave birth to such a mass shooting.
Is this similar to the once proposed ban on religious symbols?
Are you referring to the Pauline Marois government's
in
freedom of charter?
Mm-hmm.
It is, but it's a more watered down version. The liberals are trying to appease, the voters that I guess Pauline Marois would have had, and trying to win those votes. Obviously, this is it's political rhetoric. It's not ironic that it's happening around elections being less than a year away. It is not as extreme as what she had proposed, but it still is very vague and opens a doorway for a lot of abuse and personal biases in the way that it can be implemented.
If this actually passes and is adopted by the National Assembly, how would this personally affect your life? What would it mean when you step out of your house and walk down the street?
Well, I don't wear the face covering, but, and this targets and marginalizes mostly women who wear the face covering, which is a small minority of Muslim Canadian women. And in Quebec, that number is even smaller. It's 3% of Muslim Canadian women. So I wouldn't personally be affected, but regardless, that's, the bigger issue here is why is the government even dictating what women can and cannot wear?
From the National Council of Canadian Muslims, Razia Hamidi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.